Okay, so thanks so much for tuning in. I'm going to show photos from a road trip that I did through northern Pakistan, which is one of my favorite trips. And I'm also going to show some pictures from Bangladesh and Cuba, and maybe a few from Kyrgyzstan. So on this trip to Pakistan, I flew to Islamabad and I took a local bus to Peshawar. And Peshawar is in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which was formerly known as the Northwest Frontier Province, and it's close to the Afghan border. And this is a picture of the Storytellers Bazaar, which was once on the ancient caravan route from the Indian subcontinent to Central Asia. And it's got old merchant houses and tea houses that were used by traders and travelers. Oops, sorry. Um, and the tea houses are literally hole in the wall places with the tea wallers sitting up by the hot coals that keep the teapots hot. So it's incredibly hot. And the green tea is made with cardamom using brass samovars, which originally came from Persia. And young boys run around with trays of tea, delivering them to the traders in the bazaar and to the street tables. And some not so young. And Peshawar is the gateway to Afghanistan. So there's many Afghan refugees. Some who've lived here since 1980 when Russia was at war with Afghanistan. And this photo shows Afghan women sitting on the ground waiting for free bread handouts. And what happens is that donors give money to the shop, which then provides the women with flatbreads. And this photo won the Politics of Food category at the International Food Photography Awards last year. And outside Peshawar are Afghan refugee camps. And many refugees have been here for years. And I'd expected the camps to be organized by, the UNHCR and set up with proper tents. But these were pitiful makeshift homes made up of twigs and rags, which are probably the remnants of the proper tents that have disintegrated. And the conditions are really bad. I was told that this child had cholera, and the children were barefoot and ragged, and they sort of swarmed around me begging. This child had flies all over its hands and face. And nearby was a madrassa for boys learning the Quran. And as we're on the subject of religion, these photos were taken in one of the old mosques during Friday prayers in Peshawar. So Torkham, which is the border to Afghanistan, is close by and involves driving up the Khyber Pass. And Although the border is currently closed to tourists, the Afghan refugees are regularly being sent back. And so the Khyber Pass is interesting, as there's remnants of British rule, including forts and the railway line that the British built. And that's the old railway station booking office. It's all derelict. And there's also British insignia on the hillsides from the different regiments. So after 4 days in Peshawar, I took an overcrowded minibus driving through the night to Chitral, and then carried on south towards the Afghan border and an area called Kathiristan, which means the land of the infidels. And it's occupied by the Kalash people, who are fair-skinned and green-eyed and who worship a variety of gods. And they're said to be related to Alexander the Great. And Kathiristan originally covered an area including northwest Pakistan and east Afghanistan. And in 1893, these people found themselves divided between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And those on the Afghan side were forced to convert to Islam, and those in the east were subjects of Queen Victoria. So there's three valleys in the Kalash valleys. There's Bumbarat, Rumbor, and Birir. And I opted for Rumbor, which has just one small guest house, which is run by one of the main families in the village. But it was fully booked by a company called Wild Frontiers, who were arriving for the Chilam Joshi Spring Festival, and they booked all the rooms. But the family a room in their home. And the Kalash live in wooden houses built into the cliffs. And most families live in one room. And during the festival, everyone dresses up even more exotically than normal. And these are some portraits of some of the women. And during the festival, they wear feathers in their headbands and bead necklaces and embroidered dresses.
Jo, when did you do this trip?
It So I did this 2 years ago, literally this time 2 years ago. So May. I was trying to, this is when the festival is, and also you can just about go to the mountains at that time, and it's meant to be not so hot in the plains, but it actually was. Um, so this is a purification ceremony, and so the day before the festival, I was lucky enough to be invited to this purification ceremony in a temple. And in the Kalash culture, menstruating women and those who've just given birth need to stay outside the home in a special building before being so-called purified to return home. This woman had recently given birth, and the ceremony was necessary to enable her to move back to the family home and also to mix during the festival. And the ceremony involved her husband purifying her with smoke emitted from a burning juniper bush, and baking freshly baked walnut bread. And so this is the first day of the festival, and this was in Bumbarat, another of the villages. And it begins with something called a milk day, and it's a sacred ritual where people offer 4-day-old milk, and people walk along the hillsides to collect the milk in these jars. And it's very crowded, and the sun was very bright, so it's difficult to get really any decent pictures. But the festival takes place across the three valleys, and there's a lot of foreign tourists. Well, not a lot, but there's a few foreign tourists as well as local ones, particularly Pakistani Muslim men who come to ogle at the girls and to drink alcohol, which the Kailash brew. So everyone kind of gets dressed up the festival. And so once they're dressed up, they climb up a steep peak, which has got an open-sided dance building, and it's got views down over the village. And then there's lots of singing and music and drumming and lots of dancing. And there's also people perched up everywhere, watching. So it gets very crowded. And everyone's in a joyful mood. The dancing gets very energetic as people link arms and race around the dance room. And later on, juniper leaves are gathered by the men and taken up to a sacred high temple, and women can't go up there, so I had to take these from afar. Um, and then they burn the juniper. This is a temple up on the hill, and they burn these leaves. And then the dancing and drinking continues into the night. And the next day, the kids all have to go back to school, and they're quite tired, and they're not really in the mood for learning. And these are Muslim girls. So Pakistan has tried to convert the Kailash to Islam, and they offer money to them. So many families have converted. And so there's a Muslim school next door to the Kailash one. So the following day, I moved on. So I was then going to head up to Gilgit in Gilgit Baltistan. Um, and this is the map. So I was coming from the KPK bottom left, sort of up. And I found a couple of people to share a jeep with. That so this is us up there. And so basically, it's incredible scenery driving up there, and the road is being widened by the Chinese, so it's not quite as scary as it probably would have been. But you do go through these incredible, mountain scenery. It was a 2-day journey up to Gilgit. And this is the Shandor Pass, which you have to kind of go over. And we were lucky because the week before it had been covered in snow and we wouldn't have been able to, drive through it. So that was a bit of a risk about, going in May. But yeah, this is fantastic. I love this place up here. And that's the local bus stop. Not that we saw anyone up there. And we just stopped at there's this one cafe up there and just had some green tea and sort of rich tea biscuits or something. Um, and this is security. There's security everywhere up here because we're close to the Afghan border. So you're constantly having to show your passports. And this is the world's highest polo ground. And for a week in July, their matches are played here. So Gilgit is a rather polluted town. So I just stayed there a night. And then I'd arranged from the Kailash Valleys for a driver and Jeep. Someone recommended one. And I'd also met this Polish girl on the bus. And so we kind of shared the cost of the Jeep. And we headed off to this area called Passau, which has got very jagged peaks. And we're sort of up in Hunza here. And this is a famous bridge. It's called the Husseini Bridge. And it's dubbed one of the most dangerous bridges in the world. It stretches 660 feet over the Hunza River. And it was very windy when we crossed it and was moving side to side. It was terrifying. And I managed to fall and one of my legs slipped through the gap. But luckily, the gap wasn't big enough to fall through. But if I'd been on this other bridge, then and fallen, then I probably would have fallen down. So this one, most of the planks were rotten and had to step on bits of wood and metal. And again, it was very windy, so it was rocking like from side to side. It was just absolutely terrifying. I really hate heights, and so I was just like absolutely hyperventilating and crossing, just holding on for dear life. It's like one of the most terrifying things I've ever done. So then by car, we went up to the Chinese border to this town called Sost, and it's very close to Kashgar in China, and that's where the border is. And Pakistan benefits from China's Belt and Road Initiative. So there's lots of new roads and tunnels being created. And these are the famous hand-painted Pakistani trucks. And here they're bringing goods from China. And so the next stop was Karimabad, which is the tourist center of Hunza, although it's not terribly touristy, really. And there's a nice old town and bazaar and some tourist shops selling rugs and antiques and decent restaurants. And it's surrounded by mountains. And there's also these old forts. And the majority of residents here are Shia Ismaili Muslims, and so they're the followers of the Aga Khan, and they're moderate and progressive, and they're really happy to have their photographs taken, and they're used to tourists. But in nearby valleys, it's not the case, and women just they don't want to show their faces to be photographed. It's beautiful though, the valleys. But the men are happy to be. So our journey continued to Skardu, and we followed the Indus River through the Indus Gorge. And en route, we passed a viewpoint where you could see the Karakoram, the Hindu Kush, and the Himalayas. And we also pass a viewpoint for the Nanga Parbat mountain, which is known as Killer Mountain for those who attempt to climb it. And so we arrived into Skardu late after breaking down and being helped by the police, overheated engine. And we stayed in a hotel on the banks of the Indus River. And the scenery is very dry and arid, but there are also pretty gardens. And here the owner's daughter and son were picking cherries from the tree. And this was a local school near my hotel. So Skardu also has sand dunes, and it's known as the cold desert. It's also less than 100 kilometers from Ladakh in India, but you can't cross here. And there's also polo. And these are some pictures of people living high up in the mountains. So did a journey that was, about 4 hours, literally going up to these kind of fields almost at the top, meadows and streams. And these are just some of the portraits of people we met along the way. And this is at the top. These people live there. And you get a lot of Pakistani tourists who come up there. They drive up in these Pradas and come and eat trout. And it's like the road is crazy. It's not widened at all. So you often get just enough for one Jeep and you're just backing in. So it's just terrifying. I feel like you're going to fall over the side. So Skardu has an attractive bazaar and it's surrounded by the Hindu Kush mountains. And these are some portraits of some of the people at the bazaar. So from Skardu, I decided to risk flying with Pakistani Airways to avoid a lengthy journey on the Karakoram highway. So I made my way down to the plains to Lahore. And although it was only May, they were experiencing a hot heat wave and temperatures were reaching 48 degrees when I walked around this Mughal era fort. So they're very bleached and bright. And this is a wholesale market. And this is just the bazaar at night. So outside Lahore and close to the Indian border, there's some brick factories. And as you probably know, entire families work here in shifts around the clock. and they're often indentured, earning little money, often paying back loans. And these photos were taken in the late evening, late afternoon, early evening. And the kilns work all night, so they kind of work 24-hour shifts. And in the evening, they kind of wash their clothes in this pool and have their baths. And so my brick series continues to Bangladesh. And outside the capital, Dhaka, there's dozens of factories really polluting. And this photo was taken early in the morning, and it just shows the amount of pollution. You know, there was no sunlight due to the smog. It was just really awful. And working conditions are similar in Bangladesh to Pakistan. And so the workers get paid per brick. So it's a race really to shift as many as possible. And the children all kind of muck in as well and help. And these are some portraits of some of the workers. So now we move on to the Dakar shipyard, and this is a series on the ship repairers. And here they basically solder, hammer, and smooth out panels that have been added to the old ships, and also paint them. And the second-hand parts come by boat, and an army of workers heave the metal panels and anchors, propellers, and chains up the wharf. And also bricks come in here as well. And alongside the port, there's a warren of tiny workshops where men repair old propellers and weld new ones. And there's no safety equipment really. And these are some portraits of some of the workers, which I had to kind of just quickly drag them to the shade and take their portrait before the boss got to them. So to get to the port, you have to cross the Dakar River. And in Bangladesh, all goods really come by water. So the river is chaotically packed with cargo ships, which the small rowing boats weave around. Sorry. Again, the smog is so thick in the morning. It's just the sun is just like an orange ball, and there's no sunlight. And these are the rowing boats that take you over. And then on the other side from the shipyard, huge bundles of vegetables are unloaded at the quay and carried by workers on their heads to the nearby bazaars. And these are photos of old Dakar. And this is the markets and bazaars and vegetable wholesale markets. And these are some of the exhausted, not surprisingly, exhausted workers. And so this is the flower market, which is a pretty sight early in the morning. So now I've travelled south to Cox's Bazar, and this is the Rohingya refugee camps, which are close to the Burma border. And the Rohingya refugees live in well organized camps with markets and small businesses, although they live cheek by jowl in corrugated metal shacks. So it's extremely hot. And I took these photos for the UK NGO Street Child. And NGOs provide schooling and medical care, something that many Bangladeshis don't receive. So there is some resentment that Bangladesh is hosting around 1 million of them. So in Bangladesh, fishing is a major industry, as you'd expect. And the shots was taken early in the morning. And these guys are waiting for the fishing boats to come in to unload the fish. And dried fish is also a big industry, and thousands of fish hang on rows and rows of metal racks in this village. And there's also a salt industry. These kids just on that boat know it's supervision. So Cox's Bazar is famous for its 120-kilometer beach. And I was there during Ramadan last year. So after sunset, many people headed to the beach for their iftar picnics. And little stalls were set up selling food on the beach as well, for people. And these are some of the rickshaw drivers who were getting a free meal really from an NGO, a charity during Ramadan. So right now we're leaving Bangladesh and we are now onto Cuba. So this is a series of photos that I took of people at home. And before the revolution, this would have been a fairly grand house with large, airy rooms. But after 1959, when many of the rich left, houses like this were taken over by squatters who divided up the rooms both vertically and horizontally. So today, residents share balconies and windows due to new floors and walls being installed. And you can often see people peering out of the tops of windows because there's a floor up there. And these places are called barbecues because they're so hot. So I took this photo at the end of one trip, and the following year I returned and ventured inside. I took the photo with me in case, to give to some people. But actually, there wasn't going inside. There wasn't much inside, so only the front rooms exist. So it's like a facade, and the rest of the building has collapsed, and the stairs up are pretty dangerous. So this is one of the front rooms, and this couple live and sleep in this room. And let's see, the furniture is pretty makeshift, just made out of crates and wood. And then on the balcony, this man keeps pigeons. And as you can see, there's a great view of the sea. This is the Malecon, so it's prime real estate, really. And this woman lives in a pre-revolutionary bar in central Havana, and it hasn't really changed much since 1959. And she sleeps in a curtained cubicle with others at the end of the bar. And she complained, there's rats and cockroaches scuttling over her at night. And this old couple live in a room in a former mansion, which now has about 11 dwellings in it. And they live in this room, but they've kind of divided the room and they built some rickety stairs going up, and they've got a bedroom upstairs. But they're worried that the floor will collapse because there's woodworm in it, and it's all very makeshift. And this is their kitchen. Um, they can't afford milk, and they literally live off rations of beans and rice, which are subsidized by the government. This is part of the house. This is upstairs. So the building's in a terrible state, and in places it's sort of held up by metal bars and beams, and a lot of the walls have fallen in. Um, the trouble is the government sort of might declare it's unsafe, and maybe people were forced to move out, but there's nowhere else really to go, and then other people just move in because there's such a shortage of accommodation. And this is another woman who lives in the house. Again, they just made little houses within the big building. As is this woman. She was a German-speaking tour guide, but during COVID, there were no cruise ships and tourism dried up. So when I returned the following year, she'd already left for the US, carrying her 1-year-old child across the Rio Grande River. And this man, who I photographed in a place called Matanzas, had various voodoo statues in his home. And one of the religions practiced in Cuba is called Santeria. So basically, slaves brought their traditions to Cuba and they blended them with Catholic beliefs to hide them from their oppressors. And so they worship deities called orishas, which are disguised as saints. And this man had some of these sort of voodoo dolls. And so, whereas some people lived in cramped, subdivided houses, others live in houses that have hardly changed since colonial times. And this is more likely outside Havana. And this picture was taken in Cienfuegos. And one of the interesting things about Cuban homes is that they're stuck in a time warp. So there's no IKEA here. So the colonial Spanish tiles remain, as well as the antique furniture. So the economic situation in Cuba is desperate, and obviously even more so now with Trump's embargo. So this state shop doesn't have much in it. Basically nothing much, few tomatoes. And most people queue when they hear that there's food to be had. And people generally live on the street as the houses are too hot and cramped. So neighbors tend to congregate and chat and play games. And huge numbers of people have left Cuba. There's lots of houses for sale. So yeah, this house is for sale. When I was there 3 years ago, it cost 4,000 US dollars for a one-way ticket to Guatemala or Mexico. And from there, people would trek up to the US. And every day there were 8 flights a day to Guatemala, and they were all full. And this is a house sale organized by someone who's leaving Cuba, and they're selling all their possessions. Right, so now we're on to Kyrgyzstan. This is a series on a former Soviet industrial city called Balchki. It's in the former Republic of Kyrgyzstan. And Balchki means fisherman in the Kyrgyz language due to the city's fishing and boat building heritage. But it was after the breakup of the Soviet Union, it was devastated. Obviously, the end of trade links and financial backing from Moscow. So there were so many factories here. Everyone had a job under the Soviet Union, but after the breakup, basically the factories just came to an end. People lost their jobs and went from full employment to almost nothing. So today it represents a symbol of communist decay. And the parks that once were the pride of the city are filled with weeds. And these are all sort of monuments. So many young people are forced to leave the country really and find work in Russia and Kazakhstan. And they often leave their children with their aging parents. And so this woman was looking after three children, including one with disabilities, while their mother worked in Turkey and sent money back for, medicine and stuff for this kid. And that's the mother. And so this woman, Valentina, she was looking after her two granddaughters, and she's been looking after them since they were 10 months old. And her daughter works in Kazakhstan, and she just visits like for 3 days a month. It's a picture of her. And this poor woman was looking after several grandchildren after her son and daughter-in-law left to work overseas, and they've never returned. She's never heard of them since. And yeah, so she's hasn't got that much money, but they're going to grow their own vegetables and have chickens. And these pensioners look back fondly on Soviet times. They were better off then, as food and housing was cheap, and they could afford to travel around the Soviet Union. And this woman, she's struggling to pay for medication for her husband who's got diabetes. And she was showing me some photos of her travels, in the Soviet Union. This is a party they went to Kiev. And now, of course, they can't even afford to travel out of their own country, where then at least, they had half the world almost. And so with few jobs available, many Kyrgyz have returned to their pre-Soviet days when they were animal herders, which they couldn't do in the Soviet Union because everything was collectivized. And these photos were taken at Songkul Lake. And during the summer months, families travel up to this high mountain lake and its pastures with their animals, and they set up yurts and they live off their animal produce. They still have their Soviet cars, and they make the sour mare's milk called kumis, and then they just live off kind of the meat and make bread. Okay, that's it.
Well,
Fantastic, Jack. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree.
thank you for that, Jo.
Pleasure. Oh,
I know you put a lot of work in getting those very together. Thank you again for the time. It's a pity that we didn't have quite as many as we were hoping, but I will get the recording off to Kath when she can get it into some stage to get what it'll be. The usual form will be, it'll be on the website through a link.
Sure.
I've got a note from Paul Jenkins.
Yeah.
Everyone, fascinating globetrotting show, some amazing.
Jo, did you find any sort of resistance, or do you find resistance walking around with a camera and taking photographs of people? I was thinking particularly in some of the sort of the religious settings, whether that was an issue for you. You've got some fabulous portraits around the place. Any issues, or was it generally accepted? You know, you were walking
Not
around there
really.
with a camera, obviously.
You know, definitely in Peshawar, they were really just happy to have their photos taken. You know, again, it was the men, not really the women there. And then, you know, they even kind of invited me into the mosques and were happy for me to photograph and everything. So it was only really up in the mountains if you were trying to kind of get any of the women, or they didn't like it. But otherwise, yeah, no resistance at all, really.
Yes.
Oh, come on. Paul asks, how much gear were you able to take with you? Did you vary it between locations?
So I just basically I just got two cameras. It's kind of changed. I've changed the kind of kit a bit since these trips. So one so I think in the Kyrgyzstan one I had a Nikon D800 and I changed the lenses then. And then I had a Nikon Z6. So I kind of tended to have a long lens on one and 28 to 70 on the other. And then I bought a Sony a mirrorless. Now I've got two mirrorless, so a bit lighter. And again, I have one long lens and one 24 to 70, because I just find it's so dusty. You don't want to be changing lenses. And I don't even, now it's too hot and too crowded to kind of even have a rucksack. So I just have a little bag, you know, one of those Uniqlo little kind of bags, and can even fit a lens in that and the batteries, and try and just kind of go with two cameras or even just one.
Were those trips for charities, Jo? Were they private?
No, it was private. I just did that. I wasn't paid for it, but yeah, I just offered my services. So yeah.
And getting yourself around, you know, just buses, talking to people, sitting in lorries and so on. Is that how you do that?
Yeah, so it was buses, but then I did set up you know, Jeep in which is, you know, obviously to get to the mountains, but otherwise, yeah, no, it was quite easy really to do that. I'm kind of used to doing that, being a backpacker since I was like, you know, young. So yeah.
Oh, fabulous pictures.
Thank you.
I love the brick kilns. It's something I've wanted to do in the Dash, because I've seen them, and you fly in over them. I don't usually fly into Dhaka. You can see them underneath you as you come.
Oh, can you?
Yeah,
just they're so dusty, and
yeah, they're so evocative. Especially in the light you had the time of day. It's beautiful, isn't it? With the oak of the sound of the bricks, and then the light as well. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and also they're just so kind of, the women are so elegant, even though they're lifting all those bricks, you know, and so dirty. It's so dirty, but they still kind of like dress really elegantly, and yeah. And they were, you know, they were very receptive. They're quite happy to be photographed. I mean, I went to, actually I did some of them also in near Islamabad, because I did the original ones around Lahore, and then when I got to Islamabad to kind of fly out, I just sort of asked at the hotel if there was any. Well, in fact, no, I asked the AP producer who I work with. I said, "Are there any, you know, near?" I was in Rawalpindi, and he said, "Oh, there's quite a few near there." So I managed to get a taxi out there, but the taxi driver was absolutely terrified. And he was going, "We have to leave, we have to leave." And I said, "No, I booked you here until 7:30 at night, you know." And he really didn't like it. He was kind of scared they were going to rob us or something, but you know, they were absolutely fine. But...
Was there any FCO against the Khyber Pass when you were in that area? Did you just wing it?
Oh, all that area, yeah. even just going up to the Kalash valleys, they say you can't go. I think you're probably okay in Hunza if you fly up to Hunza. So that's kind of Gilgit up, that further up, you know, Karimabad, but yeah, definitely that whole area just sort of driving up. It's, yeah, I guess my insurance wouldn't be valid if something happened, but yeah. David, did you go to that part when you went to Pakistan?
Yeah, the Kalash. I've been to the Kalash.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the same. Looks like the same, because I remember there wasn't a festival on when I went there, but there was. They took me up to that open area where.
Oh yes, yeah.
Big kind of place where they hold the festival. Yeah, they're very beautiful people, aren't they? And you've got that a bit like in Syria, the green eyes and the
exactly
waves that came across. It's really striking, isn't it? In there.
Yeah, just like Syria. Yeah, totally.
The blue green eyes, which kind of surprises you. No, very beautiful. Very beautiful.
Well, if there are no more comments, it is perhaps
just another question, Joe. You went to Cuba, and so talking about the voodoo. Have you been to Haiti?
No, I haven't. No, have you?
No. Just, I should have gone 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, but that's true of a lot of places, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, years ago I was crewing on a yacht, on a boat from Miami, and we were kind of going down to the Virgin Islands, and we were really keen to go to Haiti en route, but the captain was like saying it's a terrible place. He said it's, you know, it will be robbed, and yeah, even then it was bad. So yeah, never got there.
It'll be a while before. Yes. Yeah. Well, thanks again. That's brilliant, Joe.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are you doing a panel for qualification, or you know a panel, you know,
fellowship?
Yeah, fellowship, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think I probably not actually, just because I think you have to go back to the same place about 10 times, and yeah, I was kind of thinking about doing the Brits, but was told that I need to kind of do a lot more, so I'll see. Yeah.
Have you been to the place in Bangladesh over near where the British Bangladeshis come from?
No, Sylhet.
Stones out. Yeah, the Sylhet. Yeah, they get the stones.
Yeah, no.
That's amazing. That's worth.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when you actually when you look through your photos doing this, it kind of brings back the places, and it, you know, I was thinking, you know, it's actually great Bangladesh, you know, and I was thinking, yeah, that, you know, perhaps it's worth another trip, because it is so photogenic, Bangladesh. So yeah, maybe next time I'd go.
Richard Murphy writes in the
yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. Very enjoyable, inspiring. I need to dash off. I really enjoyed your photos.
Oh, thank you. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in.
Yeah. Okay.